Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind. Earth, sky, and stars, 10,000 suns.
Namaste. Hi, welcome to the Shaman and the Mermaid, and we're bringing you your astrological forecast from March 18th all the way through April 16th. And there's a lot of activity going on this one, plus one of the biggest energies of the year that we put out in our 2022 report. That's at the middle of April. We'll get there. And we've been doing a lot of work with Carl Jung lately. He's been coming through, and not surprising with all the energy in this astrology report. So we picked one of his quotes, one of his directives for our mantra.
Yes, his famous concept of unconsciousness and how it affects our day-to-day behavior seemed appropriate at this time. So the theme for this time is his quote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Yee. So we're going to talk about how the planets and the alignments and aspects during the next month could help us step into spring. And happy spring, y'all. That's coming up on March 20th. How when we step into this next year cycle, and I truly believe that the beginning of the year is the beginning of spring season, when everything is bursting forth and coming anew, and a new beginning on fauna and flora of most creatures anyway. As that begins anew, it seems like a good time to set things into motion for our own selves as humans anew as well. So following the cycles of the season, we feel like this is a good time for us to jump into that Aries bandwagon, which we'll be doing as we cross the threshold into Aries on March 20th. And Aries is about taking initiative and driving forth and having that thrust like spring does, as all the little tulips come jumping up through the ground, and the crocus and the hyacinth, and all the little birdies will start to be born, and squirrels will start to be born. But it's a good time to kind of check in with your Samsara Wheel. And Samsara in Sanskrit means the same flow, and it's direct translation, but it's the wheel of your soul's evolution. So to me, when we cross over that spring threshold from the end of winter into the beginning of spring, it's the death season coming into the rebirth season. And it's a good time for us to check in on what we need to leave behind and let stay dormant, what's no longer serving us, and then what we can move forward into that's like the next iteration of our evolution, what would help us on our path and fulfill our purpose, our soul's purpose. And so Carl Jung's idea that unless we bring the unconscious into the consciousness, that it will direct our lives and we'll call it fate, fits in so well, because there's a whole lot that we leave in that shadow land, or in that death realm or underworld or netherland, without ever even questing it, without ever even taking venture to see what is in the shadow and lurking. So this is a precipice, or a point in the wheel where we can go in and do what in psychology would be called shadow work, and taking a look at some of the things that are deeply buried. And it's prime time for that, because they want to emerge. Just like the seasonal change, these things want to come to light. And if we follow his advice and bring it into consciousness, then we hold the reins a little bit more, and we don't blame it on, oh, it's just fate. This is happening because it's just the way it is. Well, no, bring it out from the shadow. Then you have control over the situations in your life that maybe seem a little challenging at this time, and you have more power around it. And Aries, as we're stepping into it, as I said, is about stepping into your personal power. So there's a lot of energy around that, and Michael will explain here in a minute, but a lot of the planets are having a square dance with each other, and we actually went into the YouTube rabbit hole looking up square dancing to see if some of the language there would fit into this report. We had kind of fun watching and remembering some days gone by where square dancing was a thing. And because this is what's going to happen, we're going to do-si-do between big planets and little planets. And just to bring in another past illusion, we're going to need to tiptoe through the tulips a little bit because there's a few little fireballs, and so we need to watch our step as well as grab the reins and take initiative. And Michael, you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Mm-hmm. The report actually starts on March 18th with the Virgo full moon, and this would be the last full moon of the astrological year. It's the last full moon while the sun is in Pisces. And the Virgo Pisces axis has a lot to do with this theme about conscious, unconscious. Pisces represents the collective unconscious, the collective spirit realm, all the archetypes, all the energies that are in the soul and the transpersonal realm. And then Virgo is very personal. It's you and your relationship to your body, your relationship to how you serve others, your relationship to the gifts that you've been given. And this axis, while it may seem they're opposites, they're meant to work together. The function of Pisces to Virgo is to bring the collective consciousness down into a singular point so that it can be of service, grounded here in third dimensional reality, and have practical purpose. And then Virgo back to Pisces is to take that very particular energy and find its way all the way back to God, Spirit, and the universal, the Namaste principle. And so Virgo to Pisces is the axis of service, or the axis of awakening to Spirit through your personal journey. And so this full moon is illuminating that, and it's being squared by Black Moon Lilith, or Lilith as we just call her. So Sun, Moon, and then Lilith is here in Gemini. Lilith is one of these Carl Jungian, though he didn't come up with Lilith, but I'm just using that as a verb, type energies. Lilith is the unconscious feminine that needs to be awoken and brought to consciousness and stand in her power. The unconscious feminine is abused, misused, suppressed. It's susceptible to greed and lust and power struggles and suppression and misuse. And then the awakened Lilith is when you stand in your power, your kundalini, your snake power comes through, and you consciously make choices, or consciously set boundaries, or consciously move into a direction. And so this full moon is illuminating that.
As he said, Lilith is squaring the moon and the sun. And the moon is the feminine, or the mother energy, and the sun is the masculine, or the father energy. And Lilith is squaring, and we've said, so many times before, squaring means conflict, or he prefers to say challenge in those aspects. And so Lilith, representing the shadow, or the repressed, or the depressed, or compressed side of the sacred feminine, is looking to square off with her sister moon, who is the overt, particularly full moon, the overt showcase of the feminine. It's like, hey, lady, wake up. And I say lady as in gender, and really this is men or women. We all have the sacred masculine, we all have the sacred feminine within us. Ida and Pingala snaking through and awakening the 7 gates, or the chakras, and bringing us to our highest self, or enlightenment. So it's, hey people, wake up. But hey feminine side, wake up. And then she turns and looks at the sun and says, hey masculine side, wake up. So Lilith is one of those reasons to tiptoe a little bit cautiously so you don't find any tripwires, because she's not one to mess with. She has the image, or the representation of, much like Kali in the Hindu tradition, or you could liken her to Sekhmet in the Egyptian. And she's no mess around. She's the one who asks the question, what are you settling for and why? And why are you settling? And she has that question, she poses that question because she is in the mythology or the archetype, the one who was first created with Adam, and they were co-equals. And then so Adam in the myth says, hey Lilith, why don't you, do whatever I tell you to do? And Lilith says, oh no, we're equal, and I don't want to do it like that. I want to do it this way. Can we talk about this? And he's like, no, you're supposed to be doing it my way. And so she leaves the Garden of Eden and takes off, and he says, fine. And then Eve comes along out of his rib, and the story then ensues, as you've probably been made known in Genesis, about how Adam and Eve came to be. Lilith, meanwhile, took off and did her own thing because she represents, I won't settle. I won't settle. So she is now squaring Sun and Moon on that full moon, saying, why are you two settling, masculine and feminine? Everybody rise up and bring it from the unconscious to the conscious and make those shadow, dark places, like myself, Lilith would be saying that, so that we can see the light too. Let all things come to light. And then we move on to March 19th.
And I'm going to package March 19th all the way through the middle of April with some energies. Venus and Mars have been traveling together in the night sky for almost a month. They've been moving at the same pace, and they've been doing the same aspects, meaning like if they change a sign, they both do it. If they square somebody, they both do it. Last report, they had their exact conjunction, and then this report, Venus is a little bit ahead of Mars. So on March 19th, Venus squares Uranus. On March 22nd, Mars squares Uranus. Then on March 28th, Venus conjunct Saturn, and then on April 2nd, Mars conjunct Saturn. Followed by the final square dance on April 5th, Venus goes into Pisces, and then on April 14th, Mars goes into Pisces. And so they are meeting up with all these energies. Venus and Mars can represent the conscious masculine and feminine, what is awake and known, what we perceive we know. And Uranus is the unknown unknown. You don't even know what you don't know. And Uranus is there to awaken us. That's Uranus's job, to awaken your personal spirit, your personal Hierodayam heart, your personal inner self, and awaken it to consciousness. Uranus doesn't care whether that's done by shock, awe, and trauma, or whether it's revelation, amazing, and mind blown. Either way, you will learn the lesson. And so it's like playing with lightning. However, not to make it overly dramatic, but this is what we call a third quarter square, meaning Venus and Mars squared Uranus about 6 months ago, and they're coming back around. And so this is more about integration. What did you learn? You've kind of seen this before, but be on your toes.
And there's another two square dancing as well. You want to explain Sun and Mercury?
Sun and Mercury are traveling together, though they always travel together because Mercury never gets far from the Sun. The Sun will go into Aries on the equinox on March 22nd, and then Mercury will go into Aries on the 27th. And so the Sun and Mercury are working together, so the mind and the personality, or the psychopomp, the one who delves into the unconscious and makes it conscious. That's Mercury's deepest spiritual purpose, is to delve into your underworld, into Hades, into Pluto, into hell, into the seven gates, into the chakras, and pull out what is not in alignment with spirit and help you heal that samsara wheel.
He's the messenger that can travel between the two worlds, and one of the few that can go between the two worlds. So there's a lot of square dancing between the smaller planets and the Sun, and it's a lot of squaring too, and a lot of big hitters. Uranus, part of that unconscious revolution, helping out. You could think of the squares with Uranus as a kickstart to help us bring that unconscious to the conscious. If we're using it in our favor. If we're ignoring it or denying it, or trying to actually run away from it, I think there's a lot of times that we like status quo, we don't want change, and so when we see it coming down, we try to batten down the hatches and hold on tight, and then maybe if we could just get through the storm, everything will be okay. And this is not a time for that. This is a time to grab your kite and try to ride that, windy storm that might be coming through and fly with it, or put the sail up on the boat and, go out to sea with it and just see what happens, but not to deny it, because that is going to keep us in that same samsara cycle. And let me go back to that. The samsara cycle is the cycle of death and rebirth of your soul. And in the yogic tradition, it's believed that you will take as many cycles as your soul needs to incarnate, to clear karmas, and to attain levels of consciousness and understanding so that you can be in your highest way. And then when you attain that enlightenment or samadhi or nirvana, or become the bodhisattva, however you want to call it, then you have this liberation, or you're a jiva mukti, or you're set free from the wheel of samsara that you keep coming back into. So instead of ignoring the things that we need to work on in this unconscious realm of our being, go in bravely, like you would go into a cave spelunking, and take a look at what is inside on that unconscious level that might be holding you back from taking that next higher evolute of your being. And all of this square dancing of the smaller planets are really in motion to help facilitate that ability for us to take a look at the darker things. Lilith is not an evil energy. It's not like this awful association in the cosmology that we need to hide away from. When Lilith is in the house, we need to take a big focus and attention on where we can take initiative. This is a chance for us to really power up. And Aries is right there as well, as we cross the threshold into that rebirth time. This is the time for Easter, where we celebrate the resurrection of Christ. This is the Celtic celebration of Ostara, and we celebrate fecundity and abundance and fertility and rebirth. There's all kinds of messaging out there showing us it. Bring yourself anew. Bring yourself to the new beginnings of your life. I was reading another astrologer who I really like. Her name that she goes under to look her up is the Hare and the Moon. And she was saying, take initiative for things in your life, like service for others without having to wear a halo. I really love that one. There's so much virtue signaling, as it's called. I love the little names that people give things, but virtue signaling, like, look at me, I'm doing good. Just do it to help. That's the next evolute of our people, is that we need to step into service more. That's part of the unity of our human family. And then another one that she offered was that empathy is the most important emotion in our next evolution of our being. Like, work on empathy. And that's a little bit different than compassion. They're similar, but I can't even tell you how many times people come up to me in the studio and say, I think I'm empathic. I think I can feel other people's feelings, and I'm sensing their, vibe and their energy. And I'm not surprised by that at all. And I absolutely believe that more and more people are becoming empathic, because that's where we need to go. That's bringing the unconscious into consciousness. And so if you're one of these many people who feel very sensitive to other people's energies in the room, instead of being fearful of that, it's a gift, and it's helping us to evolve, because the more empathic that we are, the more empathy that we show for one another, the more kindness we will exude, and less anger will come from us, because we'll have a sense of understanding for that. That's really what it is understanding. To stand underneath the situation and have that, understanding from the dark side of it. I understand from underneath, from the cave view. I know what you're going through. So embrace your empathic abilities and be emphatic about it, because this is a gift at this time and it is awakening. But I encourage you to check out The Hare and the Moon. She had a whole list of good things to check into for really bringing us into consciousness from the unconscious realm and letting us step into a higher version of ourselves, taking initiative. A couple more little things to wrap up the big hitter that we have.
Well, I'll touch on two things, I think. Last one is the new moon. Put that in there. And then our Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. The new moon is March 31st. Aries new moon, Sun in Aries, Moon in Aries, Mercury in Aries, and Chiron in Aries. All the Sun, Moon will be conjunct Chiron on this Aries new moon. And Chiron's the wounded healer, another one that's trying to make what is unconscious conscious. Mm-hmm. And Chiron is pointing to the masculine for 7 years. This has been a journey that we started a few years back, and we're in the middle of it right now. We have another few years to go. So if Chiron's pointing to the masculine, the wounded masculine looks like weakness. It looks like impotency. It looks like lack of leadership. It looks like fear. It looks like greed. It looks like war. It looks like not open-heartedness, closed down, unempathetic, selfishness. You get all the words. Positive, healthy, conscious masculine is open-hearted. It's a leader. It's strength. It's moving forth. It's thrusting out with purpose. The conscious masculine, not in a, I'll leave the Facebook post off. We'll talk about that some other time. The conscious masculine supports the feminine. It uses its external power to support something else as opposed to take things for itself. So during this time, it's a new cycle with Chiron, Sun, and Moon, and it's kicking off the new astrological year. It's saying this is a year to really empower the masculine in a harmonious way. The last big aspect, unless you have something to say about that new moon energy.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Mercury being in there with the Sun and the Moon and Chiron is a really beautiful opportunity to have heartfelt dialogue with self and other around difficult, challenging issues that maybe you'd rather keep down in that unconscious place. Bring it to the surface and shed light to it. That new moon, and new moon, the first new moon of this astrological year, it's setting the tone really for the whole year. It's a whole cycle of astrology that we're beginning for, the moons as we go around, the 13 moons. And this is a beautiful opportunity to set, good, healthy dialogue with that Mercury piece in there into motion. That was another one of the points that Hare and the Moon made about ways that we can evolve ourselves and bring the unconscious to the conscious, is have those hard conversations. When you find yourself wanting to avoid a conversation or a dialogue or any kind of talk with somebody, that's all the more reason that you need to step into it. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It just means you're going to have to use some more of your, emotional maturity as you go into it. But it's a sign and a symbol of something that is begging to be made conscious. So I encourage that all the time, of course, but that new moon on March 31st is really ripe for that sort of thing.
Nice. The last big aspect, and this one is influencing the field for the full year, is Jupiter conjuncts Neptune in Pisces. Whoa! I don't know why that gets that. The last time this happened was 1854, so 168 years ago, when Walt Whitman was writing Leaves of Grass, and the Transcendentalists were in the field. And so it's a reprise of that. Hopefully it's a spiral up on the Wheel of Samsara. Jupiter has to do with faith and trust and taking the quest and journey of the soul to make something conscious out of the unconscious. It's the hero or heroine's journey. And Neptune is spirit, Pisces, the great unknown, the mystery, spirituality, cosmic oneness, samadhi. We're hopeful about this one, that it will bring in a field, a year, an energy where people turn to spirit, turn to the deeperness of their heart. However, there is a shadow side to this, and it has a lot to do with delusion, lying, falling asleep, going to war, fear, all the things of heaviness of the past 6,000 years of patriarchy.
Big addiction issues can be part of that as well. Pisces Neptune in general has that potential of strong addictive tendencies, and then put Jupiter in there and it makes it like magnified. So just be conscientious of that, because sometimes when we don't want to look at the dark, we just numbify ourselves and then take that as we did our work. And that is all the buzz of psychology, is helping us get past that need for the crutch and helping us to take that deeper dive into that unknown territory. And then oftentimes another word you hear is spiritual bypass, and this is another potential at this time, is taking that holier than thou. Boy, am I doing all the work, I'm meditating all the time, but not looking at the dark stuff. I'm just staying up on the top, I'm not looking at the dark stuff. That is a spiritual bypass. And meditation is excellent, yoga is excellent, pranayama, breath work, all of it is excellent. We need that to get ourselves centered, to find that seat of the soul, to sit in the Hridayam heart. Excellent, important, do it on the regular, but it does not replace the deep work we need to do, looking at some of the things that are yanking us down, holding us back, not letting us pass through on the wheel of our soul's journey. So it's both. We have to do the shadow work, and we take these higher paths and higher approaches to clearing our mind that is conscious. You know, everything that we're taking in the world around us, and there's a lot of suffering going on around us. Ukraine, you know, people fighting amongst each other about vaccinations, and the pandemic, and social justice, and all the things that is in our conscious awareness. That is enough right there to break somebody. And so we use the tools of meditation and yoga and breath work to help us find center there and use our sense of connection to our inner source and our intuition to help navigate what we already know as conscious. But underneath are these strings pulling on us, these deep-seated desires. Why do we have this bent towards anger or sexual promiscuity or whatever it is, lying, cheating? Look at the dark stuff and see why. And then you're able to bring it to the surface, and it no longer has those strings pulling you down. That's what it's all about. So good luck as you cross over into a new beginning. I'm looking forward to it myself. It's always that fresh start of a new year for me, and so I look at it that way anyway. And so we'll leave you again with the quote: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Bring it to the light. Namaste.
Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light that shines in your mind. Earth, sky and stars, 10,000 suns shine within us all. Give praise to the one. Victory to love, the love inside your heart. Victory to the light